The night my signal bars vanished was a night my life quietly split into two versions, the one before and the one after. One moment, I was staring down at my phone, watching the last fragile thread of connection fade away beneath towering pine trees in northern Oregon. The next, I was standing in a forest, so still it felt as though the earth itself was holding its breath. No notifications, no buzzing, no way out, just silence, deep, ancient, and unsettling. That was when she turned toward me. Firelight danced in her eyes as she spoke, her voice low but steady. "Out here," she said, with no Wi-Fi and no witnesses. She wanted me to sleep beside her. Not rushed, not hidden, just close. Her words struck harder than the cold night air. Not because I didn't feel desire, but because I felt too much. Accepting would mean crossing a line I had spent years carefully building to protect myself. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 38 years old, a search and rescue volunteer from Washington State. I hadn't come to this wilderness retreat seeking adventure or romance. I came because I was exhausted. By grief, by memory, by the constant noise of a life that no longer felt like my own. A year earlier, my wife Rebecca had died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. No warning, no goodbye, just a quiet house afterward, and a silence that followed me from room to room. Grief is a way of sitting beside you at dinner, of climbing into bed with you at night. I was drowning in it. The retreat promised something simple. No phones, no internet, no distractions. Just nature, reflection, and a group of strangers who were also running from something. I thought I was ready. I wasn't prepared for how completely isolation strips you bare. There were only 6 of us, guided by Thomas Avery, a soft-spoken former pastor who believed the forest could heal wounds that cities only deepen. Among the group was Hannah Miller, a travel photographer from Colorado. She had tired eyes and a smile that felt practiced, as if she'd learned how to wear it just to survive. We didn't talk much on the hike in, just polite nods, brief glances when the trail grew steep. But by the time we reached the clearing where we'd camp, something in me felt lighter, like the trees were quietly carrying part of my burden. The first night passed peacefully. The second night changed everything. A sudden storm rolled in, fierce and unforgiving. Wind howled through the trees, rain hammered the tents, and the campfires struggled but survived. For safety and warmth, Thomas instructed us to pitch our tents closer together, pairing them in case anyone needed extra heat. That's how Hannah and I ended up near each other, separated by thin fabric and the unspoken tension that sometimes exists between two strangers who feel strangely familiar. As the storm softened into a steady whisper, time began to blur. Without phones or clocks, hours lost their shape. We talked quietly, careful not to pry, letting the conversation unfold like confession without a priest. She spoke about constant travel, about hotel rooms that all felt the same, about loneliness hiding behind adventure. I spoke about Rebecca, about loss, about how grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits with you. The air grew heavy with things unsaid. Then she leaned closer to the firelight and said it. She wanted closeness, not escape, not passion, just warmth in a world that had been unkind. And I froze. Her words weren't a demand, and they weren't a seduction. They were a quiet plea for human closeness, something fragile and honest in a place where masks didn't survive long. I was shocked not because I felt nothing, but because I felt everything. Desire tangled with fear. Longing wrestled with loyalty to memory. I had promised myself I would never use another person to fill the space grief had carved inside me. The forest seemed to listen as I struggled, the crackling fire marking each second of indecision. Finally, I spoke. Gently, honestly. I told her I couldn't give her what she was asking for, not in the way she deserved, not while my heart was still learning how to beat without breaking. Rebecca's memory wasn't a prison, but it was a responsibility. Still, I didn't walk away. Instead, I offered something simpler, and in that moment, braver. I suggested we sit together, share warmth, let the night pass without crossing lines that might haunt us later. She considered it, then nodded. We sat shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in blankets, watching embers glow like small promises. There was intimacy in that restraint, a quiet respect that felt more healing than anything else could have been. Over the next few days, the forest worked its slow, patient magic. We hiked moss-covered trails, cooked meals over open flames, and listened as Thomas spoke about forgiveness. not just of others, but of ourselves. Hannah and I grew closer in a way that surprised us both. Not through touch, but through presence. We laughed. We shared stories. We allowed silence to exist without rushing to fill it. The real challenge wasn't resisting desire. It was learning that connection didn't have to be transactional, that closeness could exist without taking something away. On the final night, the sky cleared completely. Stars spilled across the darkness so brightly they felt unreal. We lay on the cold ground, staring upward, breathing in air that felt impossibly clean. That's when I realized the forest hadn't taken my grief away. It had simply softened its edges. Hannah admitted she no longer felt the urge to run, at least not that night. We both understood that whatever this was, it didn't need labels or promises. It just needed honesty. When we hiked out the next morning, our phones buzzing back to life felt intrusive, almost rude. Reality returned too fast. We exchanged contact information with smiles that carried no pressure. Whether we'd meet again didn't matter as much as what we'd already given each other. Proof that two broken people could choose kindness over impulse, respect over escape. I returned home changed, not because I slept beside someone in the forest, but because I didn't. Healing, I learned, sometimes comes from choosing the harder path, from sitting with discomfort until it teaches you something true. Out there, with no Wi-Fi and no way to run, I found a quiet strength I thought I had lost forever, and that strength carried me forward, into a life that finally felt possible.